organization. Ms. Sultana has been awarded the United States International Women of Courage IWOC Award for her work with Rohingya refugees in 2019. Without further ado, I'd like to request Ms. Razia Sultana to share her thoughts and ideas on Rohingya crisis and possible solutions. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. Can you see me? I thought I'm a mosquito. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to say something. I'm a Rohingya lawyer already. My honored sister, she described my introduction, so I'm not going over there. I'm of Rohingya origin, and I am a Rohingya still, and I am very proud to be by origin a Rohingya, but in spite I'm also a Bangladeshi. So I am giving the Bangladesh government and Bangladeshi people to give a shelter to my community. So this is a very big for us. Thank you so much. The ethnic Rohingya is one of the many nationalities of the Union of Myanmar. They are fighting for their very survival as a people. They are struggling for their rights of self-determination, which will guarantee their collective rights, the rights to rule their homeland by themselves, the right to practice their religious teaching and culture freely, the right to teach, learn, and promote their language freely, and the right to uphold their identity without fear and live peacefully together with other ethnics. We therefore claim that the ultimate goal of our struggles is to establish a genuine federal union of Myanmar, which will guarantee democratic rights for all citizens, political equality for all nationalities, and the right of self-determination for all member states of the Union, including ethnic Rohingya. Only policy reform that the review and recognize the citizenship of the Rohingyas and provide them with social justice will resolve this socio-political problem in the long term. The Rohingya have been persecuted and deprived of their fundamental rights by successive military regime in Myanmar for decades. This led to repeated large influx of refugees into Bangladesh. In the 1970s, Khan, killing thousands of civilians, burning hundreds of villages, and driving over 700,000 Rohingya into Bangladesh. The scale and horror of the atrocity committed by the Myanmar troops has been exposed again and again in the media and documented by international agencies. There is strong evidence that the operation was pre-planned and constituted genocide, as declared by the UN fact-finding mission. However, the Myanmar government until today continue to deny that its troops committed any crimes. The military leaders that authorized the genocide remain in power, and the troops continue to commit crime with impunity. In Rakhine State, the Myanmar army is now targeting the Rakhine Buddhists who are being captured and tortured to death. They have imposed an internet blackout in this area so that news of the atrocities does not leak out. It is therefore impossible for Rohingya refugees to return under this current situation. The Bangladesh government reached an agreement in October 2018 with Myanmar government for return of the Rohingya refugees. But nothing has moved forward except that the Myanmar government has built some transit camps and keep announcing that they are ready for repatriation. But of course, no Rohingya refugee dare to return because there is no security, no guarantee they can return to their own original home, and no guarantee of citizenship. the Myanmar government is only willing to grant so-called National Verification Card or NVC card to returning Rohingya. Rohingya NVC card is for only for Rohingya, and Rohingya is ethnic of Arakan, so NVC card is not for Rohingya. Now I'm telling about the camp situation as a field ground level activist. One of the problems we have been seeking to address is human trafficking. Women and girls are being lured out of the camps, sometimes with promise of marriage, give a good job or better life, and then forced into bonded labor, including sex work and sex slave. And another issue is being serious matter is child marriage. It's have stopped by counseling and proper awareness might be helpful to prevent this crime. Worried about protection, so parents take this step. I cannot blame them. According to several sources, the situation at the camp, a massive change at night with several deprived Rohingyas engaged in open trade and abuse of narcotics along with the unlawful act. This is happening or happened because absence of light and proper monitoring, also problem related to infrastructure. Trafficking and drug ring that include Rohingya men have become notoriously active in this camp, adding to lack of security. Some, but few Rohingya is getting involved in crime, which is triggering violence, murder, and other breaches of law. In last 2 years, few Rohingya have become involved in murder, smuggling, rape, and human trafficking. Also worried about illegal weapon, what is linked to drug, and drug trade is not controlled by the Rohingya. It is true, some groups are involved of illegal activity with help by others. And confidently can say, still there is not that much strong link that local security cannot control. It can be prevented and as much as soon. The proper law system and proper awareness, there are so many things happen, so it might be focused by local government. Thousands of Rohingya men in this camp who are unemployed, hungry for education and essential need, and with an uncertain future ahead. It is not surprising for recent circumstances that some of them will resort to crime. And it goes without saying that the most vulnerable group in this camp are Rohingya women and girls who fell victim to violence either inside their makeshift home by their partners or outside by the Rohingya man. And of course, local. The area in there are controlled by a specific security, but after the night, after the evening, there is some security, but it's not proper. So some unlawful groups and some, this is not too much, but it's some group, they're intentionally doing something what is not that type focusing, but it's become a serious matter if you are not focusing that issue. Trafficking and drug gangs, this is not for recent. It already long time ago, and now the Rohingya is a huge amount of there, and they are now mixed with them. So for this issue, you cannot blame the Rohingya nation. 1 or 2% may be bad, but not the whole nation. So I urge, please don't blame the Rohingya. That every community, every nation have the bad person. But the bad person, if you mention by a nation, it's to hurt. There are some rumors that Rohingya and host community between both are tension arise. I just came from today from camp. Last 1 week, I tried to find out what is tension between the host community and Rohingya. But it is true, something, but it's not that type. Maybe environmental, maybe land grabbing, but it is duty of the local government and NGO, they can prevent this one. Environment issue and social structure are under threat. This is very sensitive issue, and it's not overnight you can change, because the huge of more than 1 million people, they are live in this jungle. Yes, it would be jungle because it's still there. We also face the rat and snake, and also there is so many things. So environmental is by force, but I'm sorry about this because these people, they cannot spread all over the Bangladesh. At least they are stay in that area. So maybe they're getting the help. I want to inform and arguing you all not to be believed the rumors that are being spread about the Rohingya links with Islamic terrorists such as Al-Qaeda and IS. This is a false narrative, which was used by Myanmar army to justify the explosion of the Rohingya, but is now being spread by the Hindu-Tabat lobby in Bangladesh to create fear and hatred of the Rohingya. They feel threatened by the solidarity between Bengali and Rohingya Islamic communities, which can serve as example for the rest of the Muslim world. I urge you all to keep this precious solidarity intact and to support the aspiration of the Rohingya for safe, voluntary, and dignified return of their homeland. About Bangladesh policy, I fully agree Rohingya issue is placing a huge burden on Bangladesh. And I fully understand that the Bangladesh leaders are frustrated with Myanmar administration. And the international community failure to pressure Myanmar to recognize the Rohingya as citizens and provide international security for them to return safely for their own homes. You are likely aware that there has been no strong action yet in the Rohingya issue at the UN level because of the Chinese and Russia veto at the UN Security Council. There has not even been arms embargo, let alone referral to the International Criminal Court. However, there have recently been hopeful signs of increased international pressure. The UN Human Rights Council has established a new mechanism to prepare case files for future persecution of Myanmar leaders. This was a landmark achievement. The case to bring Myanmar to the International Criminal Court for the crime of forced deportation of the Rohingya to Bangladesh is also moving as steadily ahead, and for a formal investigation is likely to begin soon. Since the OIC decision in March this year to take Myanmar to the International Court of Justice for the crime against the Rohingya, the process has also been moving ahead, with Gambia tasked to lead the case. There have also been widespread calls in Canada and Netherlands to make Myanmar to the ICJ for the Rohingya genocide. And earlier this month, the US State Department imposed travel sanctions on Myanmar top military leaders, including Commander-in-Chief Min Aung Hlaing. These are the first international sanctions against the top military chief. All earlier sanctions were only on his subordinates. These are the huge blow for the prestige of the Myanmar military and sends a clear signal that the US has lost patience with the previous engagement approach. Other countries are now likely to follow suit. At the same time, inside Myanmar, the army is facing increased pressure. The NLD government and ethnic political parties are pushing for constitutional change to limit the power of the military. And the offensive by the Arakan army in western Myanmar is taking a huge toll on the Myanmar army. I personally am working with other activists from the different ethnic communities in Myanmar who are strongly opposed to the extremist Buddhist nationalist movement and who share a vision of a democratic federal union where all ethnic nationalities, including Rohingya, can have self-determination and equal rights. I therefore believe that there is a hope for political change in Myanmar and that Bangladesh will not have to bear the burden of the Rohingya refugee indefinitely. Bangladesh has gained great international political credit for hosting the Rohingya refugee. It can continue to keep this credit by implementing human and progressive policies towards the refugee. One issue which can gain further credit for Bangladesh is the education issue. Right now, formal education is not yet authorized for the Rohingya refugee children. So most children are just staying in donor-supported child-friendly space, where they are supervised to play game and sing. In fact, all Rohingya families want their children to be formally educated. And there are thousands of educated Rohingya who can teach them in the camp. But right now, this is not formally allowed. So the refugee have to set up informally community school to teach themselves, but donors are not officially allowed to support them. This policy must be changed. It is the right of every child to educate, and Bangladesh should allow formal schooling for all children with Rohingya teachers and with a curriculum chosen by the Rohingya themselves. As stated by UNICEF, investment in education is desperately needed to avert a lost generation of Rohingya children. Another positive step which Bangladesh can take is to abandon the plan to relocate the refugee to Bhasan Char Island. No Rohingya want to relocate it there because it is so isolated and unsafe. The Rohingya want to stay near the Myanmar border, near their old home, because they hope one day to return. By relocating to the island, it will be like accepting that they can never return. They will therefore have to be relocated by force, which will be an international public relations disaster for Bangladesh. Finally, and most importantly, Bangladesh must keep supporting the refugees' right for voluntary, safe, and dignified return. The Rohingya have suffered two failed repatriation for Bangladesh in the past 1978 and 1993, and the mistake must not be repeated. The only way that return can be sustainable is if Rohingya are recognized as full citizens with full rights and are provided with international protection when they return. Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been calling for a safe zone for Rohingya to return to Myanmar. This is what Rohingya are calling for: protected return to protected homeland. Rohingya are calling for the 3 townships in northern Arakan, Mongdu, Butidong, and Ratidong, the area where most refugees came from, to be declared a protect zone. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is calling for regional security force to provide protection to the Rohingya in this zone. This will be acceptable for Rohingya, but only if Western powers are also involved in this initiative. There must be coordination among the United Nations and all global power to pressure Myanmar for safe and quick repatriation. The USA, Russia, and China need to play a vital role in this regard. It was very encouraging that on Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's recent visit to China, China assured her they would pressure Myanmar to expedite of safe repatriation of Rohingya. At last, I want to say, presenting the Rohingya as a vulnerable community, a low-class community, is just a tactic of misguide the civil society for divert the main issues that they can be more concerned about the NGO project and other only growing. And this kind of rumor and this kind of vulnerable issue is only growing the disconnecting with the Rohingya and other community. Return home back is our first priority. Create a safe zone not only for Rohingya, for all ethnic and minority who belong to Arakan. Concern and concentrate the issue of human safety, not in investing. Find the way to unity to then Arakan will peace. Arakan is land of Rohingya, Rakhine, and other minority. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sultana, for your well-articulated speech emphasizing the need for guaranteed human rights, democratic rights, political equality, and the rights for self-determination for ethnic Rohingya population, including social justice and recognized citizenship for Rohingyas. Before I invite the next speaker, I'd like to introduce one more guest among us sitting on the dais, Mr. Manuel Marcus Pereira. Pardon me if I pronounce it wrong. So Mr. Pereira is the Deputy Chief of Mission IOM, Cox's Bazar. So now I would like to invite our next speaker, Mr. Muhammad Abdullah Al Hassan Chowdhury, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Education, Government of Bangladesh.
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. Honorable Chair and His Excellency Earl Miller, Ambassador of US to Bangladesh, and other discussant, ladies and gents. Actually, I am not expert on the Rohingya issues. I worked in Yangon, in Bangladesh Embassy, Yangon, as commercial counselor. And during that time, actually, from the close, I've observed some incidents there, and I will tell you something from my own experience. Actually, at that time, an interest grew in me to know the history of this community, because I saw a community attack on them, and I saw something actually which pained me. And now I will tell you something out of my experience. First of all, actually, we all know that Rohingya have been described as the most persecuted community by the UN. And this persecution, started long before. Actually, when army captured power in Myanmar in 1962, this persecution started, and they adopted hostile policy towards this community and unleashed xenophobic propaganda against them. In 1978, they conducted an operation when many panic-stricken Rohingya crossed over to Bangladesh, and at the time also, they were repatriated through negotiation. And after that, this incident kept repeating. And when I was there in Myanmar, from 2012 to 2015, actually many incidents happened. And in 2012, there was a sectarian violence in Rakhine state. And at that time also, there was actually large influx of Rohingya in Bangladesh, though Bangladesh government at that time actually followed another policy. Government did not open the border, rather it was closed, but Rohingya who came to Bangladesh were returned with some humanitarian aids. It was given by the BJP, and our foreign policy was at the time not to open the border, but to help Rohingya how to tackle the situation. I can remember that in 2012, from a very trifle incident which can easily be settled in the court, the violence started. A Rakhine girl was probably raped by 2 or 3 Rohingya boys, and it was the issue. There was laws, policemen, everything was there. They could take um, actually action against the offender. Ultimately, they took. But on this issue, there was actually a lot of tensions, and some Rakhine extremists raided a bus which was carrying some Muslim who are not from this community, from Rohingya community. They are the Muslim of Yangon. They went to India, and probably all they were involved with Tabligh probably. For some rituals they went to India, and when they were coming back, the bus was attacked and many were killed. And this also created tension at the time in Yangon. And Muslims, leaders in Yangon, organized a protest meeting and also submitted memorandum to the government. And involving this issue, actually some Rakhine extremists backed by the security forces created a reign of terror in Rakhine state. There was attack on the Rohingya, and many actually to save their life fled their home, fled their village, but ultimately they could not go home. They were actually those who came to Situe from Mongdu or from other villages. They were ultimately taken to a makeshift camp, and they could not go back to the. Still, they are living there, and in a most inhuman state. And not only this, there was information at the time to us that they are not given any Medicare facilities, even the relief, even the aid activists or those aid organizations are not allowed to go to the Rohingya people to distribute relief to them. So they were getting all sorts of obstruction, but the government was silent. The security forces were backing them. I saw this. So actually, the Myanmar government plays a very mysterious role at that time. So Bangladesh actually always tried to solve the problem bilaterally. Bangladesh earlier did not take it to multilateral forum. At the time, our Foreign Secretary chairing this session visited Myanmar, and also he'll talk with the Myanmar authorities about this problem. And but one thing I have seen, that the Myanmar authority very meticulously actually unleashed propaganda at the time against this Rohingya people, and they also used some monks who were then actually giving propagating speech everywhere. And this also created tension and also led to many communal attacks. And you know that Rohingyas are fighting for their ethnicity. In 1982, when a citizenship law was enacted, the law actually recognized 129 ethnic group. Rohingya though demanded that they be recognized as an ethnic group, but ultimately they were not recognized, and at the time they were made non-citizen. But before that, they were citizen. they were citizens and they had all the right, they have all the rights. They were also in the government. But after enacting this law, they were made non-citizen and they were deprived of all kinds of human rights. Even at that time, I saw they are actually they could not move from one place to another without the permission of the authority. They were deprived of their education, all kind of human rights. Actually, they are living in a very inhuman condition. It was some kind of apartheid prevailing there. This was the condition. So you can very easily imagine if a group of people live in this condition, what kind of actual reaction or consequence it may create. After Aung San Suu Kyi coming to power, it was a great expectation to her that she will do something for the Rohingya, and also actually accordingly she formed a commission which is known as Anand Commission with Kofi Annan as its chair. And when this report was submitted, and that very day probably actually there was an attack on the police post we have seen in the newspaper, and many police were killed, and on the excuse of this there was an operation on the Rohingya people, and a large scale exodus then took place, and at least now more than 500,000 actually Rohingyas are now in Bangladesh. Now actually I will just talk. Bangladesh has given shelter because if at the time, if Bangladesh did not open the border, the situation would have been more worst. Actually, we know already the official figure shown by the government is more than actually I can't remember the figure at this moment, but it was a big figure of casualties at the time, though Myanmar government has given a very conservative figure about the massacre. And now actually what I think, what we need to do at this moment, the Bangladesh government is doing our foreign ministry is actually following the, I think, correct policy. Bangladesh is trying to solve the problem bilaterally, as well as the issue was taken to the multilateral forum, because it has already been proved without the international pressure, actually, this problem cannot be solved. International community must be involved. We have seen that when this after this massacre, or what UN says that the textbook example of ethnic cleansing, the international community actually got so much vocal, and US also playing very vital role, and they already banned the visit of some high military official to US. European was also playing very active role, but we see that many actually some powers are not actually playing their proper role. Many resolution could not be adopted due to the role played by some powers, but I think they must be convinced about the problem. We need a durable and sustainable solution to this problem. Otherwise, it will keep repeating. And this is not at all actually, it will not bring bad consequences for Bangladesh only, or Myanmar. I think whole the region will be destabilized, because these people are vulnerable to be lured into any kind of militant activities or other crimes, because they are deprived of all kinds of rights. So international community as well as all others will have to think what to do as early as possible. So a dignified and safe return for the Rohingya must be ensured, must be done within short time, and international actors must play their role. Otherwise, and if not any sustainable solution is done, the crisis will be deepened more and more, and ultimately the whole region will be affected. So that's all from me. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing from your personal experience. Now I'd like to invite our next speaker, Mr. Manuel Marquez Pereira, Deputy Chief of Mission IOM Cox's Bazar.
Good afternoon. It's a different crowd from what I used to, but let's see if I can do this in the 5 minutes, right, you gave me? Okay. So first of all, thank you to North-South University and to Professor Catherine for inviting me. I think that the wisdom of this collective throughout today and tomorrow can speak more for what are the solutions for this crisis than my words, but I have 4 points very fast to share with you as a perspective from the field. First of all, I think that we should never forget not only the gesture of the government of Bangladesh on opening its doors, but above all, the complementary efforts that are done. The government of Bangladesh actually gave 24 square kilometers of land, 6,000 acres, to accommodate these individuals. The gesture of creating space to exist is probably one of the most humane things to do. And as humanitarian, I have been confronted throughout my life on the onset of a crisis with that creation. I was in Iraq with the United Nations before being here, and my daily struggle was to find space to safeguard the individuals that were coming out of Mosul on that bloody day. And the government of Bangladesh here, in a very short space of time, created that. The second is that, unfortunately, in the Facebook society that we have today, the attention span of the majority of the countries and institutions is fading away as a distant problem in someone's backyard. That cannot be permitted. The international community needs to shoulder the costs, the responsibilities, and the accountability of this crisis until it's resolved. And it will be resolved as the geopolitical problem that was told here many times throughout the day, with a political solution in Myanmar. Everything else that we do in the meantime is a band-aid. And my last point is to say about tensions and fights. From my perspective, and this is Manuel speaking, I think the challenges of the refugees and the host community in Cox's Bazar are exactly the same. They deal with economical empowerment needs, they deal with the risk of exploitation, and they deal with the exposure to hazards. They just have different solutions and different forms to address the problem. They are not different. The fight out of poverty, the right to quality education, the preservation of life in case of disasters are the same. They need different efforts, and we cannot lump them all in a solution and a very copy-paste approach. This to say, this problem is very complex, one of the worst and most complex crises I've ever worked with, but I am confident on the teams on the ground, on the government of Bangladesh and everyone on this room to do their part. And if we do so, as the honorable former minister from Malaysia said, we will not lose our humanity. I think that is what's at stake. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pereira. That's a very brief and focused talk. Thank you for that. Now, I'd like to invite our next speaker, Mr. M.A. Kashim, Member, Board of Trustees, North-South University. And he is also the former chairperson, Board of Trustees, North-South University, founder, life member, North-South University Trust, past president of the Federation of Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce and Industry, FBCCI, founder, chairman, and director, Southeast Bank Limited, and former Chairman, Association of Private Universities of Bangladesh.
Distinguished Chairman of this plenary session, Mr. Shahidul Haq, the Foreign Secretary, Minister of Foreign Affairs, distinguished speakers, Mr. M. Abdullah Al Hassan, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Education, His Excellency R. Miller, U.S. Ambassador to Bangladesh, Mr. Moinul Pereira, Deputy Chief of the Mission, Mrs. Razia Sultana, Human Rights Activist and Rohingya representatives, distinguished participants of the conference, faculty members, media representatives, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and Assalamu alaikum to all. First of all, I would like to congratulate the organizers of the North-South University and the sponsors of the conference for supporting not only a moral and humanitarian issue, but also for a cause which demands justice and urgent actions from the world leaders. Therefore, it is important to stage protest, debates, conferences, so that the Rohingya crisis remain as one of the top UN agenda for resolving the crisis along with the big powers. Along with the formal response of the government, humanitarian agencies and the international actors, these deserves the discussion and debate in the academia for appreciating the magnitude of the problem and for the understanding and effective solution to the problem. The world has witnessed the forced migration and displacement of the contemporary times. The case is in Syria and other migrants who are forced to migrate due to war, and they are being sheltered in many European countries. The case of Rohingya's influx in Bangladesh did not occur due to war, but by the mass killing of the Rohingya majority Muslim populations, exploiting them from their own land by arson, rape, and looting of their properties. Rohingya Muslims community comprise less than 5% of the total population of majority of Buddhist community, Myanmar. The expulsion of the Rohingyas and its reunification are observed by the United Nations Human Rights Council, tantamount to the crime tried under the International Court of Law, which is principally committed by the Myanmar military. The United Nations independent investigator, Yogi Lee, has called upon the China and Russia to oppose the Myanmar government's violation of human rights. UN body condemned all rights violations in the Myanmar and called for the independent investigation into them, including against the Rohingya Muslims, to ensure that perpetrators of their held accountable. However, it is a matter of great disappointment that the role of big powers such as China and Russia and neighboring country India on the Rohingya crisis for condemning the heinous act was absent. Rather, what we have seen, the Russia and China voted against the resolution against Myanmar and Japan abstained from voting. Therefore, we need to engage the big powers to resolve the crisis, stand by for the cause of the Rohingyas. We all know that since August 2017, an estimated about 700,000 Rohingya population from neighboring Myanmar have been pushed to Bangladesh territory, falling in the districts of Cox's Bazar. The government of Bangladesh and UNHRC and the NGOs have responded to this crisis. Well, Besides this, I being a businessman and the past president of the Federation, which I feel and understand from my community, this business community particularly very much worried because Chittagong is the longest seashore of the country, rather maybe in the world. This was beautifully decorated. Cox's Bazar is a tourist center. And there we have some salt industries. We have some frozen fish process industries are there. These all are disturbed. The environment is totally destroyed. Moreover, in the area, people are complaining that farmers are not taking them as a labor because our laborers are getting 600 or 500 taka per day, whereas the Rohingya laborers are getting very cheap, hardly 200 or 300 takas. As a result, the workers are out of job. Similarly, a lot of problems has arisen. The forest is disturbed, rather destroyed. For all these concerns, I think the business community is worried when the problem will be solved. It is a part of the country. It is a wariness of the nation, and moreover, this in the morning session, our honorable chief guest, Mr. H. Imam, also mentioned that he visited few nights over there, and he saw a lot of the activities of the people. Large number of Rohingya are being exported to different countries by the private organizations, to Dubai, to Malaysia, to other Middle East country, to work as a midwife or the house work for all this. It is the prestige of the country because they are bearing the Bangladesh passport. So think we are as a leading country as being an exporter of the people, we feel ashamed that how the Bangladesh nationals has come all these places, Qatar, Middle East and so on. So these things are the concern of the business community, and I hope the nations will take care of these. For the small particular issue, we cannot be disturbed, image should not be damaged, and the Rohingyas, they are basically, I have seen the Second Great War, and from that very day, we used to know Rohingyas are already posted there, and Rohingyas were once, I think, ruled by the one king called the same my name, Abul Qasim Raja. And Abul Qasim Raja has ruled for a long time during Pakistan time. He was fighting with both Pakistan army and the Burmese. Gradually he was caught, he was killed, and that area was remained within the Rohingya areas comfortably with Burmese. And their main job was to export rice to Bangladesh. Both sides were happy because we need to have a food crisis at that time. Today, people are saying they are not Bangladesh nationals. In last 70 years, we know they were Rohingyas with the right arm, straight, and they have the separate identity, and they should get the separate passport for their own, nationality. As such, I feel the world should understand that this is not the Bangladeshis are over there. This is the different state people has come to our country, and they must come forward to solve our problems. We need to deal with the crisis and all the rehabilitation program, but we should strive for a lasting and peaceful solution which will not worsen their lives further. This was very nicely mentioned in our main keynote speaker in the morning, that he has given 7 points that for the security of the Rohingya peoples, world must take care of these few points. Hope our policymakers of United Nations and the big powers would give necessary attention on this crisis. We need to deal this problem prudently. Further delay may lead to the negative consequences in the particular area, and gradually it will be in the Southeast Asia. So with these few words, I say thank you very much for giving me patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your concern, and thanks for your valuable speech. Now, I'd like to request the Chairman, Board of Trustees of North-South University, Mr. Benazir Ahmed, to deliver his speech.
Good afternoon to everybody. Honorable Chairperson, distinguished speakers, Excellencies, faculty members, delegates, and my dear students. I'd like to offer my special thanks to North-South University Institute for South Asian Policy and Governance and UNHCR for organizing such a important international conference. Rohingya crisis in Bangladesh, challenges and sustainable solution. I think these topics and this problem is not made by Bangladesh, and this is not only the issue of Bangladesh. It is an issue of international issue. Bangladesh government on humanitarian ground may consider to entering the refugees, but it cannot be a longer time, and Bangladesh cannot bear that for a long time. I was with our Honorable Prime Minister to 72nd and 73rd UN General Assembly in New York, UN headquarters. In September 17, she placed his demand to the international community. At the same time, in September 18, she placed some more solution. I think if the international community considered this, we can resolve this issue shortly. Excellency, as one of our speaker mentioned, we got the support from your government, US government. We believe US is always supporting our activities, and we are with our US for our economic and political ties. I would request you, please give us your support, and at the same time seek support from other communities so that we can resolve this issue shortly. And this 2 days conference obviously will find out some solution, recommendations, and I would request the world community to consider the same and to resolve this issue at the shortly. I will not prolong my deliberation. I have my deliberation in the morning session. Maybe tomorrow in the closing I will say something more. Thank you so much for your kind presence. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very brief speech. Now, I'd like to request His Excellency, Mr. R. Miller, US Ambassador to Bangladesh, to deliver his speech.
Assalamu alaikum. I think I'm the last speaker today, correct? So I'll try and keep my remarks very brief. Because everything that I'd hoped to say just in the short hour I've been here has been said and expressed much better than I can do. For the students who are here, you're among real heroes and heroines. You have some extraordinary people here doing extraordinary work. You have an international woman of courage. You have people on stage who have been addressing this issue since long before August of 2017. Some of the folks in this room, when I see them in Cox's Bazar, they're covered head to foot in mud and sweat and doing what they're doing, saving lives with no complaint. And it's the very best of all of us. And it's moving to be here among you, and I feel humbled and quite small, actually. I'm proud to work with the government and people of Bangladesh. You've heard me say it many times before, who have opened their hearts and borders to 1 million persecuted human beings, our brothers and sisters. Proud to work with the international community on this enormous humanitarian effort, the savior of untold thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. Someone mentioned about an hour ago that the solution to this problem is not money and resources, it's political will. And there's a great deal of truth to that, but money and resources help too, don't they? And I'm also proud to say the United States is the leading contributor of humanitarian assistance in response to the Rohingya crisis. Through the generosity of the American taxpayer, the United States has provided $542 million since the escalation of violence in August of 2017, including $464 million for programs inside Bangladesh. And as I'm sure you've heard over and over again today, not just for Rohingya, but for the host communities that are sharing this incredible burden. In 2019 alone, the United States contributed over $118 million to Rohingya and host communities in Bangladesh. This includes $45.5 million I announced on March 3rd for the UN World Food Program, and on February 15th, the U.S. announced $60 million to the United Nations Commissioner for Refugees, International Organization for Migration, and the United Nations Children's Fund. We continue to call on others, to call on all countries to join us in contributing to this humanitarian response. The 1 million Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh make up part of the 68.5 million people who are displaced worldwide, including more than 28 million refugees and asylum seekers. The majority of these displaced people were forced to flee their homes due to violence, armed conflict, and/or fear of persecution. And again, I'm proud to say the United States is there to help. We are the largest single provider of humanitarian assistance worldwide, and that's more than $8 billion in 2018. And our goal is to alleviate, along with all of you, lives, to alleviate suffering, save lives, ensure vulnerable people receive life-saving assistance and protection as close to their homes as possible. And by working with key partners and many of the people in this room, we're doing just that, providing urgent, life-saving support. And besides the Rohingya refugee crisis, of course, we're all working together on large-scale humanitarian crises in Venezuela, Syria, South Sudan, among others. I'm going to cut my other remarks short about all the different programs that we have, all the great work we're doing. You've heard about those today. But it's really important. I know you've heard it a number of times, but let me just reiterate the fact that this crisis, you hear about donor fatigue and compassion fatigue. We cannot let that happen. And if you get that sense that's happening within your own soul, you need to go to Cox's Bazar and look in the eyes of the people who are in those camps, and look in the eyes of the people in the host communities who are impacted by this humanitarian calamity. You know the challenges, sustainable solutions. You've heard many of those today. The solution, for the most part, resides in Myanmar. And the United States will continue to put pressure on Myanmar to come up with a solution where the people who have been so cruelly displaced can return to their places of origin. And we all have to work together as a global community to ensure that happens. The Rohingya want to return to their homes in Myanmar. We support the safe, dignified, sustainable, voluntary repatriation of the Rohingya. The United States remains concerned the government of Myanmar has not taken the appropriate actions to hold accountable those responsible for human rights violations and abuses. And on July 16th, the U.S. Secretary of State designated 4 Myanmar military officials for their roles in gross human rights violations in Rakhine State. These individuals and their immediate family members are ineligible for entry into the United States. And with this announcement, the United States is the first government to publicly take action with respect to the most senior leadership of the Myanmar military. And these designations are in addition to sanctions against Myanmar military and border guard police, as well as 2 military units for their involvement in ethnic cleansing in Rakhine State and other human rights abuses in Kachin and Shan states. These latest, thank you. It's just one step. It's just a building block But these latest designations send a message, and we hope a strong message, to Myanmar officials. Should they commit atrocities and other serious human rights abuses and continue to do so, there will be consequences under U.S. law. We can't allow what happened to the Rohingya to stand. What message does it send if we allow this to stand? What message does it send around the world? The United States is focused on policies that will change behavior and promote accountability. We believe this latest action is one step toward achieving these goals. We continue to call on the government of Myanmar to fully implement the Annan Commission recommendations and others and offer our help in doing so. We continue to call on Myanmar to create conditions on the ground conducive for the safe return of Rohingya, and we continue to press for the establishment of civilian control of the military, justice for victims of horrific human rights abuses, and accountability for all those responsible. Again, I just want, particularly the students in this room, you heard it before. One of the speakers said that this issue is not going to be solved simply by governments and international organizations. It's going to be solved by people getting engaged, people around the world, and certainly young people around the world. And I encourage you to take inspiration from what you've heard today and roll up your sleeves and become involved. There's nothing I've done in 32 years as a public servant, as a U.S. diplomat, that makes me feel prouder than to be associated with this life-saving effort. And again, I'm moved and I'm humbled when I go and see people in the field doing the great work that you're doing. Bangladesh, you should be very, very proud of what you've done. And the last time I was in Cox's Bazar, I met with a group of Rohingya leaders, and I said this, and I want you to keep me honest on it. I said, you will not be forgotten. You are not forgotten. And as long as I'm here as U.S. Ambassador, that will certainly be the case. Thank you.
Thank you very much, His Excellency, Mr. Miller, for taking the trouble to come here and spend time with us, and for your very thought-provoking speech. Thank you very much for that. Now it's time to hear from our session chair, and our session chair is Mr. Muhammad Shahidul Haq. We have already heard from him in the previous session. Now it's time again to hear from him as the concluding remarks. Mr.
Stability and security. I think we have managed that quite well. One thing I often say, and I mentioned it when I was in the UN parlor, that think of a scenario replicating Europe, that these people comes in and Bangladesh provides protection, food, and say that, please continue to walk and find your home. What would happen? The whole South Asia would have been destabilized. So Bangladesh has done a big favor to the international community by South and Southeast Asia. Think of that. So that's what we did in terms of security and stability. I would like to warn you that security is certainly a big issue. We are attaching due importance to this, but for heaven's sake, do not securitize this Rohingya issue. That will be the big disfavor to this community. I hope you understand what is the difference between securitizing a moving population. There are examples all around the world right now. I'll not go into that direction. And what it means to stabilize and bring in law and order on the moving population. Now, in doing this, we have also had our own struggle, and I would like to share with you, especially with our young colleagues. There are two issues which continue to haunt policymakers and civil servants all over the world dealing with these kinds of forced population. One is the national interest. You are supposed to ensure, die for your national interest. That's what the civil servants are all about, including the foreign service officials. On the other hand, how about your international obligations? So, continuous juggling between national interest and your international obligations, which is called, in this case, humanity. And where is the tricky balance between the two? do you absolutely forget about your international interest and uphold international obligations, or vice versa? So that continues to haunt us. We have so far, under the leadership of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, drawn a balance. And that is why when we were inviting ICC and ICJ, we struggled that how that will have an impact in long run on the Bangladesh's national interest. And I can tell you that there will be repercussions, there will be impact for Bangladesh to going into the accountability area, and the nation possibly will have to take the cost. But we thought that that is the best possible way we can move on. So I would like you to also be aware of it, think of it, that when we say things which need to be said and when we do not say which need not to be said. But this balancing is a huge issue. There are countries which has absolutely tilted this balance. There are countries which still keeping the balance. Look at Germany, Sweden, and other countries. There's another question, that are we making business out of it? This is exactly the narrative which Myanmar is propagating. You'd be surprised that they're circulating note verbals, very formal way of communicating diplomatically, saying that Bangladesh do not want these Rohingyas to leave because they are making money out of it. Of course not. We are paying heavily, not only in terms of 6,000 acres of land, forest land, but also, when World Food Program last year, possibly no one knows, were facing huge problem in terms of feeding them. Bangladesh government gave them 20,000 metric ton of rice to be distributed among the Rohingyas. Just to give you one example, that how much we are paying, including our monetary costs. So please do not buy this. We have no intention of making this as a business venture. We have deliberately avoided any proposal coming from anywhere to make it as a business venture. In fact, some of the academicians and some of the international organizations did come out with a very thought-provoking presentation, which was shared with us, where he said, why don't you take these people and we'll give you this much of money. And here is a gentleman sitting here, who had the guts, or director, why don't you stand up? Stand up. Give him a. And this gentleman had the guts, sitting in the ministerial meeting, said that we will give you the double, take this Rohingyas to your country. So there was no answer to this. So we have no intention of creating a business opportunity out of a humanitarian and geopolitical crisis. We want these people safely to be back to their own country. That set of questions came in. What is the end game? I don't know whether the gentleman is still around. No. What is the end game? I don't know end game. We don't know end game. In politics, in international relations, there's nothing called end game, but there's a continuous game that is being played. And in this continuous game, what you have to do is you have to sustain. And you can only sustain as a government when your people are with you. If your people are not with you, in these kinds of a geopolitical game, you just cannot sustain in long run. So please, I think this kind of a exercise, this kind of discussions are very useful for us to continue to be reassured that whatever we are playing in the national interest. Return is integral component of the Rohingya issue. We are not looking at local integration. In fact, this is what the other narrative coming out of Myanmar. We have also friends in Myanmar with whom we have served since our younger days. And they said, you are 162 billion people. Why can't you take 1 more million people? And then we are very good friends. We don't have to do all kinds of these things. I said, of course, that's what your long-term game is. That is what the Myanmar wants. Don't buy those narratives. Do not propagate those narratives. It's a question of humanitarian. It's a question of genocide with whom you can't do business, you can't compromise. If you do it, they'll do it with many more nations and states and the ethnic communities. Now, last question, I will not take your time. What do you do now with these kinds of a multidimensional complex problem which is mixed of human rights, humanitarian, and geopolitics? What you do with it? For us, it's a nightmare, absolute nightmare. For us, those who negotiate with Myanmar officials day after day, it's a nightmare. We have sleepless night. Even when we go there, we have hesitation to eating their food because we don't know what they want to do with us. So this is where the nation is. And these negotiations are one of the toughest. One of the most funny things, I can spend hours after hours, and some of my colleagues are sitting here. Why don't our colleagues, those who deal with it, stand up? Let them see what you do. Come on, Firdausi. These are some of our colleagues. Give them a big hand. These are the people who continue to fight for your interest. They often risk their own life negotiating because the other side thinks if one of this person disappears, possibly the negotiation will be easier. But they have seen one after another coming in and doing the same kind of an argument. The most important thing is that, when we sit down and talk to Myanmar officials, they agree on everything, every possible thing that we ask. But the moment we land up in Dhaka for official communication, they said, we can't agree with this. We can't agree with that. Our generals are not agreeing. Our government is not agreeing. And we come back to point zero. This is what we are faced with. I went to the Security Council in last March and told that we are not only unhappy, we are disappointed with the Security Council because they have utterly failed us in dealing with one of the most unstable phenomena of South Asia. So we are currently taking an approach, and these are also strategic thinking. We are continuing our bilateral approach. Some often criticize us that why are we keeping our bilateral windows open? State cannot stop talking to a state. During the most difficult period of Second World War, Germany was talking to Britain, Britain was talking to Italy. That is what diplomacy is all about. You have to continue to talk. Keep your bilateral option open. But there we don't stop. We are also talking the regional powers. You'll be very happy to learn, and I have been privy to those discussions for the last 7 years, where our Prime Minister very strongly lobbied with regional powers that you have to do something with the Rohingya population in terms of returning them to their homeland. If you don't do it, tomorrow it will haunt you. It will destabilize the region. It will destabilize Asia. The price will be very costly and dear. But, as I said earlier session, we continue to also remain globally active. This is a major shift. Somebody was asking what is the shift in the foreign policy of Bangladesh. This is the shift. For 20 years, we did not multilateralize this issue. But in 2017, we took it to the multilateral forum. Not only that, every time Human Rights Council took up Myanmar case, we at their earnest request for years after years hold their hand, saying that we are neighbors. We are geographically together. So we'll have to hold each other's hands and help. We said enough is enough. Now we not only left their hand, we have also mobilized resources and countries to bring in strongest possible resolution against Myanmar. This is a major shift in our policy. We are fighting on the rights forum with our neighbor who will remain neighbor for the rest of our life. This is the major shift that you are seeing. So much so that we had to open a humanitarian wing in the Foreign Office to deal with only Rohingya issues. But at the end, why we do it? We do it for humanity. We do it for ourselves. It might happen tomorrow with us, as it has happened in 1971 with us. At that time, we'll have to have friends. And if we do not set examples, no one else will set examples for you. I'm extremely happy and delighted to see so many young colleagues continue to remain after so much of a torture today in terms of listening, but it's worth. Hang on. We will set a global example in terms of Bengali nationhood. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. You do understand that how much our students, they are appreciating the statement of our Foreign Secretary. So I do understand this is becoming a very, very long day, but we have finished most of the serious business till now. Our students have done some wonderful job. They have prepared a photography exhibition at the exhibition hall of NSU, and also they collected 40 paintings which have been painted by Rohingya children, which are also been displayed there. Other than that, they also organized very small, a kind of a solidarity cultural program for Rohingya for only 30 minutes. So I would request you that if you can just hold some patience till now and wait for we need 10 to 15 minutes to prepare the stage, and we will do a very quick cultural program in line with this whole solidarity with Rohingya people, and then probably we'll go for dinner, which will start at 7:30. So I would request all our participants to be seated, and request our panelists here to, if you just can take the seat. The audience will take just 10-15 minutes, and then the cultural program will start. Thank you very much. And again request the students and others, please be seated. We'll just take 10 to 15 minutes to prepare the dais. So volunteers, can you do it very quickly? Prepare the dais as quickly as possible.